Hi, Director DeAndrea.
Oh, excuse me. Marcy's trying to get in, so I resent her the link.
Okay.
She can get in.
What is our total count of members now?
We're 7, not including myself.
Sure. Will you please make me a co-host again? Oh, you did. Okay, cool. Thanks. So the only person missing is Member Brown.
Hi guys, long time no see.
Yeah, hello. Welcome back, everyone.
Yes, I was seeing you guys all the time and then nothing for months.
Yeah, that was a lot of meetings we did.
Yep.
Director DeAndrea said that Member Brown is trying to join, so let's give her another minute. Well, Director DeAndrea, do you have any update on Member Brown?
I sent her the link. She hasn't replied.
Well, we have a quorum regardless, right?
Yes.
Well, we might as well go ahead and start. Hopefully she
Okay.
can get in. Obviously, the information's available to connect. Everyone's here besides her. So let's call the meeting to order. And will you be taking roll for us, Director DeAndrea?
Michelle will. She's on the line.
Okay. Michelle, will you please go ahead and do that?
Of course. Chair Green,
Present.
Vice Chair Borman,
Present.
Member Brinker,
Here.
Member Brown, Member Hupka,
Here.
Member Kawanabe,
Here.
Member Leib,
Here.
and Director DeAndre.
Here.
I see that we do have some attendees. So this is in our agenda time for recognition of public comment. It's an opportunity for the public to address the Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Committee. The expectation is that any presentations will be conducted in a respectful manner. Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Committee may ask questions for clarifications, but there will not be any dialogue back and forth. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Is anyone present wish to address our committee? Do they have the ability to raise their hands as attendees?
I don't think they do.
So how will they let us know if they want to speak?
I have Curtis. Would you like to speak? Let's see. I'll allow them to talk. Okay. We also have Frank. Would you like to speak?
They show as muted. Were they unmuted? to
I
be
allow
here?
them to talk and they're able to unmute themselves if they would like to speak.
Okay.
It looks like they can raise their hands. They just typed in a message there.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh.
And then V. All right, since none of them have spoken up, then we'll move on in our agenda. If there was a technical issue and any of the three of you are trying to speak, use the Q&A and send a message so we can see that. Otherwise, we're moving on. Okay. Next is our new business proposal review. Director DeAndrea, do you want to kind of guide us? Do you have a plan for how to go over it?
Yeah, so I think did send out the two proposals. Again, we redacted the, oh, here's Marcy. I just see she came in here.
Okay, good.
There we go. There she is.
Hello, Member Brown. So she just joined at 6:08 for the record. And Michelle, if you want to move the attendees back to attendees, feel free. Go ahead, Director
Yeah.
DeAndrea.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we did get the two proposals. Those were sent out to the committee members and with the cost information summarized in separate sheets. So I wanted to talk a little bit about each of those, just to go over them. So we did receive two proposals, one from Waste Management, one from Republic Services. Those were the two that we received in the last go around. If you remember that, it was the same two firms. So we did have several other people or two other companies that attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting, but ultimately we just received the two proposals on the deadline.
Do we
So-
know that all of the, so GLF and Waste Connections definitely got the RFP?
Yes, so they were both aware of it. There was another company too who was local. I forget the name now, but they were, GFL did not attend the pre-bid meeting or pre-proposal meeting. Waste Connections did. And another company.
Is it Little Dumpsters?
Yes.
Okay.
They attended and they sent an email probably maybe a couple weeks after the mandatory meeting saying that they were not going to be submitting a bid. We never received anything from Waste Connections indicating that they were either going to or not going to.
Is that meeting posted somewhere? I couldn't find the recording of it.
We didn't post it as a public meeting. It was, I believe it was recorded by our procurement team though.
Will you please share that with us?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And so what we're just going to start with tonight was kind of walk through the elements of each proposal and answer any questions that you may have. And I think there were quite kind of some things that we did not anticipate receiving. So we'll actually start with Waste Management's proposal. So I'm just going to pull that up here. And basically, I think what was present in both of them was either they did not bid on certain items, or they provided additional information where maybe we hadn't necessarily anticipated that. And I'll give you some specifics as we walk through that. Come on, where is it now?
Just on that, your the mandatory meeting
Mhm.
question there, was anything expressed from Waste Connections as to why they were not responding?
No. So again, I never heard from them after that meeting. So, we didn't know until we actually received the proposals how many we were going to get.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, sorry about that. Share this. Can you all see that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to hit the highlights, and we can then, and really I'm just go over this in a high level, talk about some of the things that I noticed when I read through it, and then we'll go on to the other proposal. So what I think Waste Management did a good job is really addressing each of our goals in here, and how they were going to achieve that through their proposal. So they tie, let me find an example here. They tie some of our goals in boxes back to actually where the those goals and then how they were going to achieve that. So I'll find an example here. The so here's the part. So this is where they're going through and talking about different things that they've noticed and where they want to basically negotiate different items related to the contract and or how we would lay out the program. So again, I'll just hit the highlights here, but this is one item that we had talked about as a group, and I believe Chair Green, you had brought this up specifically, is this termination for convenience. So Waste Management is in the contract. It does say that there would be, that the city may terminate the contract upon providing a 180-day written notice for cause. And I had gone back to the city attorney on that, or the city attorney's office, to talk about that at the committee's direction. And I think this is a point that we can certainly negotiate with them, but at the time, the city attorney's office did want to leave that in there, is the convenience aspect.
Yeah, I would think they're being pretty reasonable there. I mean,
Mhm.
if they were to engage and purchase everything, for the city to dismiss them for convenience, that's not fair. For cause needed to be there.
Yep. So in talking with the city attorney's office, and we do have new staff in there right now. We have a new city attorney who came on board about 4 months ago. So she's open to negotiating that. So I think that's something that we can work through.
And just up front, as a suggestion, I think that it would be nice as we hit the sections, give everyone a chance to ask questions, bring up thoughts, instead of go through the whole thing and then have us do that. So maybe sections like the exceptions and then et cetera. And then as we move forward, we can check and see if anyone has anything to talk about.
Okay. Yep. This element here, the contractor shall replace any lost, stolen, or damaged containers at no additional cost, one time per household. They would like to clarify that customers will be responsible for the cost to replace a container if they are responsible for damage. Okay, again, that's fine.
I guess that would be if someone ran over their own trash can. I don't know what else it'd be.
I'm sure they've found all kinds of circumstances and situations that we haven't even thought about. So again, I think some of these are certainly negotiable. So here's a big point though that I want to point out. So after the initial year of service, the city will allow customers to opt out of the program. So if you recall, the way we said it was that everybody has to participate at least that first year to kind of set the baseline, give the haulers something to, have a kind of a constant that they can assume. And then after year one, that people would be allowed to opt out. And then I included the language that you should assume about a 2% opt-out rate beginning in year two. And the 2% was in line with what Golden was seeing. I think they were the ones who had best measured that of how many opt-outs they have in their kind of mandatory I see Member Brown has a question.
Yeah, I would just like to ask, is there going to be an opt-out fee if people would like to opt out after the first year?
Our intent was not.
Except for the admin fee, because you did
Yeah.
have that in there, which
Correct.
was what,
Yeah.
$1.50, $2 or something.
Correct. Yep.
So my understanding is that even if you opt out, you still have to pay the admin fee. Is that correct?
That was the way that we had structured the program. Correct.
And you still want to structure it that way?
We have to, because I think, so let's say you're still going to get those notices. We can't, the cost for that is really to manage the program. And so even if you opt out, then we're managing that account to some degree and still doing the mailings and the notices and all of that. So we're not going to be able to distinguish between homes that opt out and don't opt out. We still have to manage them in some fashion.
Okay, so there will be no opt-out fee. Is that correct, Director?
Well, the intent again, and we'll get to this in the next proposal,
Okay.
is that we would just pay the city's admin fee. No, nothing above and beyond that.
And so since I've attended all the waste meetings, that is set in stone that people cannot turn this down, that they have to opt in for a year. Is that still
That's the way
case?
that's the way we structured it. Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yep. So what Waste Management is proposing in this sentence is that, and that strikeout is actually that was supposed to be a highlight. So we would like to add language that if more than 10% of original customers opt out, that we would basically renegotiate the price increase because they're losing efficiency and revenue. So I think, again, that's probably on the table if we had that high of an opt-out rate. And again, we just have no clue of how many people might opt out at this point.
I mean, honestly, my perception is that that's fairly reasonable. I mean, the whole point of this should be to provide a service that's the best deal that anyone's going to get. And how could another provider provide a better deal for just a small subset of the whole city? I don't think it necessarily be possible. So this is an incentive for the program to be attractive to citizens. And, I don't know, that's just my thought. And anyone else,
Yeah.
please also let us know if you have thoughts too. And if I'm fine with all of us speaking without necessarily having to raise hands until that becomes a problem. So if we can be respectful and make that work, let's do that. Because it's nice if we can have this be an ongoing conversation. Go ahead, Member Brinker.
I agree with what you said.
Member Brown. Is your hand just still up from before, Member Brown? Okay.
Sorry, Carson. No, I'm just saying that, I know we may not get to the prices tonight, but I did look at the prices and I believe that they're too expensive. And I think people will opt out when you can get Waste Connections for $16 for $198 a year versus over $300 a year. So that's just my thought.
I've got a million thoughts too. And I think all of us have, there's a whole bunch that we're going to need to address, but let's try to keep it to whatever we're at, because we'll have time to talk about cost. We'll have time to talk about everything. But if we keep it specific to what we're going through as we go through, and I get that there's a relationship between what you said and the opt-out. I get that, but let's come to cost when we get to it and address the other things as we go through.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I was just kind of feeding off what you said about, that we want to keep this as like a city kind of deal. And I just don't know if people are going to go for that. So I'm sorry if
Oh,
I
no problem.
jumped ahead as usual.
No problem. It was
I'm
related.
sorry.
I just think we're going to have a lot of time to discuss cost. Go ahead, Member Hubka.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, and Maria, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our goal is to recommend one of these over to City Council. Am I right? One or the other, based on the negotiations they want to do in the pricing. It's not set in stone that we're still even going to do this. But we
Or
recommend
none.
one of these. Yeah, well, we don't say no, forget about it. We're still going to send it to City Council, and they'll debate, whether or not they're still going to probably look at both of them regardless. And they'll discuss amongst themselves and study in their study council sessions, and they'll talk to their, constituents whether or not they want to move forward with it. But I don't think tonight's outcome is going to be just, let's just forget about it. I think so correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it's a good, study in, what we can get for tonight. And I just want to make that clarification. I don't think we're here to say, no, forget about it. Because remember, cost isn't our only objective and goal in this situation. It was also getting trucks off the street.
And service level.
Yeah,
That's
and
correct.
service level.
So, yes, Member Hubka. So the intent is that we're presenting the information to the Citizens Committee. You can certainly make a recommendation of how we move forward, but the intent is that we'd still solicit public input. So the intent or the request by City Council was that we do another survey. So now that we have actual costs, to go back to the community and say, okay, are you willing to pay about this dollar amount? And also then with these levels of service, with these extra amenities, would you be interested in that, and pull the community and do that information plus the recommendations from the committee and present that to City Council. So that would probably be in the February timeframe that we'd be doing that.
Okay, so Director DeAndrea, how are the citizens, how are you going to do a poll? Is it going to be through computer, or can
Yes.
Okay, so it will strictly be by computer.
Yeah, so it'd be something online where it'd probably be, 5 to 7 questions, something like that.
I'm just curious, what about people who don't use computers?
Yeah, we could certainly provide a write-in option as well, and make that available, as we send out. Usually what we'll do is do a social media post of some sort saying, hey, go to this link and fill out the survey. And then in that message, we could say, if you want a written survey, we could mail one to you, or you could come into City Hall. We could offer those options.
Do you think there would be a need for another town meeting?
Potentially, I think given the situation with COVID, we're hesitant to have large meetings at this point. So I think if we're going to do something like that, it'll probably be smaller group meetings somehow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Member Kawanabe.
Thank you. Going back to the line item on page 15, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I think I agree with both Christine and Carson on this, that in the long term, they wouldn't be able to do that. But if someone was to make a strategic loss decision to knowingly take a loss for the first 1 or 2 years just to tank the program, it could be a possibility. So I just wanted to throw that out. It's kind of just playing a devil's advocate.
Gotcha. Good point. Okay, I'll continue on.
Just
Oh.
since I had one thought on the cover letter part, since we've already gone past that. Obviously on the waste management one, they're trying to push away from alley. And to me, it's very ambiguous what they're trying to do there, since it's, you know, it's not clear if they're saying that they will provide waste and recycling at the alley universally or not, because they have that limited language in there, and they have like 6 pages of trying to push us away from it. And I know that that's a very critical thing for a large portion of the citizens. So I want to point that out, that starts right in the cover letter, that they're trying to reject alley.
Exactly. So, yeah, we'll get to that in the proposal here, but that is a major, and the way that the pricing was presented is that it's either with, you know, with curb only or outside in front of the house versus, so no alley service versus limited alley service. So it's really, yeah, Waste Management's proposal is centered around the idea that they would like to or prefer to have all street side pickup.
I caught the same thing, and we just heard from so many people that alley pickup is important, at least as high as a priority, almost as cost. It seemed like they were, you know, wishing we could do all curbside, but given that we probably won't, it also seemed like they would want to encourage as many households as possible to go to curbside, even if they do offer the alley service. It's just apparently quicker and cheaper the more houses that are on the curb compared to the alley. And it did seem like they were still willing to do alleys, because I noticed that I think down where they said what trucks they would use to service, and they indicated there that the trucks that they would use would be alleyable trucks.
Yes, that was the way I interpreted it too, Member Brinker.
Member Hubgut, go ahead.
Well, yeah, that just brings up the point, we've talked about that ad nauseum. The city has to have alley service. We have to.
Yeah.
So I think it's a non-starter for one of the bidders here. Is it Waste Management? I'd have to go back and look at the pricing. But whoever is not doing alley is already out. I'm sorry. So if you want to save some time, let's just cut to that chase.
Well, that's what's so weird about it, is it's ambiguous, but it may be less ambiguous than we see, because I'm not clear what has been redacted. Like, we don't have a definition of what limited alley service is. At least I didn't see it.
Yeah, and I think that's a point that we're going to have to clarify. So to me, I took no text out. There was no text removed, just the costs. So what you received is everything that we got in terms of text, but they don't really define what limited alley service means. So I think that's a point to go back and clarify. And I'm sure we'll have, what I was going to do is generate a list of questions for both proposers, and then go back and meet with them, talk with them about through those questions. So, but I interpreted it the way that Member Brinker did, is that limited means that, yes, we'll still pick up in the alley, but they're going to encourage people to put out at the curb as much as possible.
Thank you.
So they just talk about some additional language here related to how they define contamination. That should be no problem. So here is where Waste Management's proposal assumes that the city will not publicly disclose its proposal, including pricing, until the city has made an award to one entity. This is this is why I was working with the city attorney's office. So and it's very clear in the RFP that once we
Yeah.
receive the proposals, they are public knowledge. So we have made an effort to at least make some of the cost information limited, but the proposals, there's really nothing proprietary in there that's been shared with the committee so far.
Yeah, I mean, in the RFP, it specifically says pricing is not allowed to be redacted.
Mhm.
And I mean, I guess you're accommodating them because they asked and tried. Is there anything about pricing that we don't see? I mean, what is it that you've removed that we don't see?
Just the names, and there is more detail probably than I gave in that summary spreadsheet. So there's more of a breakdown. So if you go back to those cost sheets that were included in the RFP, there's a little bit more detail in there. So I kind of totaled those, basically.
Okay, I mean, it's very clear which is which based on
Mhm.
the alley thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So none of these are really, so here's an additional thing. So this is actually both proposers are requesting that we change the index from the Denver Aurora Lakewood CPI to the one, there's a national one for water, sewer, and trash collection. So again, we did talk about this and we landed on the Denver Aurora Lakewood, but both companies want to use this kind of a different metric. And so again, I don't know that we see that as an issue, as long as there's some standard that we're weighing that against, because it's still the lesser of 3% per year.
But one thing that I think we need to do to be transparent to the public is, if we are going to try to consider one of these, then we should see a matrix that shows what that adds up to. What is at year 10, what are we talking about? That's a lot more money.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I can certainly do that for our next meeting, is show
you.
like how much it will be after if we assume a 7 or a 10-year contract, how much that would be.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's tied to inflation, so everything else 10 years from now will also cost more. It's kind of relative.
Maybe, but if there's competition, then that has an effect too, instead of just guaranteed increase.
So there's some changes here for the penalty amounts that we talked about. So they're saying that they believe some of the penalty amounts are excessive and basically don't have a nexus to what the actual harm would be. So there's just some language in here that, we can talk about that, if that's acceptable or not. We were for this item 6 was actually $5,000 per day. They're recommending that to be $2,500. Inadvertent errors, how do we define that? Who determines what an inadvertent error is? So I think there would be some work there to really work through this of what that means. We've spent a lot of time on the penalty section and really wording that carefully. So
yeah, you guys, I mean, the city staff put a lot of effort into that before we even participated. And I mean, my thought on that is for them to nickel and dime that, the whole point of those penalties is to make them draconian enough that they don't violate them, that they're important enough that they just don't violate them. And for a company as giant as Waste Management to be trying to knock these down, that makes me concerned that they want to allow them to happen because they can afford to pay when they get called on it. I think there's a lot of argument to keep them high to encourage them to not violate the penalties.
Yeah. This idea that Waste Management would have a reasonable opportunity to correct an issue, that's certainly fine. And that should be an opportunity there. Not necessarily though to, bypass the penalty process. Let's see here.
Did you already pass their part on bulk in the exceptions?
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so this attachment A, there is, so we include our draft standard contract. So they're just saying that there's a large number of incomplete sections. So yes, there would be, we'd have to go back and through that with whoever is selected, if we select a firm, to work through those details. So I don't.
They both called that out.
Yeah. And both of them, and it's true. Both of them are our standard contract speaks more to construction than it does for like an ongoing service contract like this out in the right of way. So I think, again, talking to the city attorney's office, there's room to modify that language there.
Yeah.
Okay, so they had just some language about what is acceptable and what's not in terms of really defining what is recyclable. And I guess I didn't really have an issue with that. This will be part of how we market the program and really inform and educate people about what is recyclable and what's not. So I guess having this clarified in the contract, I didn't really have an issue with that.
I didn't notice anything about the recyclable materials for either of them that seemed unusual. Member Brinker, I know you're more familiar with that stuff than me. Did anything stand out to
Same.
you?
No, it seemed reasonable, and I was impressed that they both took a little bit of time on it, showing that they're recognizing the challenges in the global recycling market, like we discussed, and are taking steps to try to get as much of the recyclable stuff actually recycled as possible. And
Yeah, that was my
minimize the
impression too.
problem.
Okay, good. Yeah, and so this just defined the non-recyclables, which if you recycle, it's like, yeah, I would never throw this stuff in my recycling bin. So,
Right.
yeah,
It's all pretty standard, I thought.
yeah. All right. Yeah, so this is where they're talking about more of the construction elements here of the contract. All right, so that was the exceptions. Any other questions there before we kind of move on? Okay. Then we'll they put the documents up front and then got into more of the meat of their proposal. So I'll brief through this. Really saw no issues with any of this other documentation here that was a required part of the proposal.
Yeah, did anybody? I didn't either. It seemed all of that stuff seemed pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. So here's the program approach. So I'll start with that first sentence there under benefits of automated collection. So where feasible, Waste Management proposes to move collection from Englewood's alleys to the curb, as automated collection is leading the way and pushing the waste service industries forward. So I get that there's benefits there. I think the question is, so when they talk about where feasible, we're not, as we've talked about, we've got people who physically can't use the alley and physically can't use the street. So, there's just some, even if people wanted perhaps to use, would be okay with using the street, they've got a lot for whatever reason that they cannot bring them to the front, or their garage faces out towards the alley and they're not going to negotiate it around through the yard out to the front, or they don't have a sidewalk even that might take it from the rear yard to the front. So I think to your point that, we're still looking at some level of alley service within the city, as much as, we could probably be okay with encouraging people to use the street side. we know that there's probably going to be a fair number of people that are still going to want to use the alley or need to use the alley.
And it shouldn't be based on need. It really, I mean, we know that from our community meetings that was the most brought up issue. And I
Mm.
mean, it's funny how they talk about it being aesthetic to put the trash out on the curb and in front of everyone's house. I mean, I think more people would argue that it's more aesthetic to have the trash and recycling be on the alley when it's available. So, I mean, as long as there's whatever this encouragement is, doesn't, you know, in any way prevent someone who has an alley from using it for both, then, you know, they can encourage it all they want. But you know what I mean? Like it needs to be, I mean, that's one of the most critical things that we all identified throughout the entire process is that alley service must be available for both.
Yep, I would agree. Okay. So you all read that the same way.
I interpreted the aesthetics thing, even though it looks written like you said, Chair Green. I was guessing they meant that it's more aesthetic to have everyone having kind of matching carts out on the street on the same exact day, as opposed to a bunch of separate trash bags and little trash cans and so forth on the street.
Okay. I just took that whole section to be
Yeah.
push you into no alley. Like, and that all of those
Mhm.
points were like their way of trying to like push us away from alley. So, but I get what you're saying.
Here was an example that I talked about earlier. So in this box over here on the right, Englewood goal attained. You know, they talk about this was our specific goal, and then they're tying it back into the text that's kind of in this section. So here they talk about that they'll be utilizing CNG, compressed natural gas fueled trucks. And that ties back into our goal for reliable collection, clean and aesthetic pleasing environment. That's what they were talking about in this section. So I kind of like that. They also put in some quotes here, which I know that's great too, if that's coming from Englewood residents about their current service. Okay. So I didn't really pick up anything here, you know, different or other than what we've talked about.
Yeah, I didn't see anything else in that, like that, those pages that were really addressing, you know, the points of the RFP, other than obviously the nice aspects of the clean fuel trucks and stuff like that.
Mhm. So they will be using software to create, to kind of optimize their routes. That was something that we requested that they do.
I think any of them are going to do that just to be able to provide the service. They're going to have smart routing.
Mhm. This just talks a little bit about how they're reporting, kind of their performance metrics, if you will, and how they go about tracking that. So they're weighing those trucks every day. Also talking about how efficient they are in terms of, I suppose, of how many homes collected per hour. So they're able to manage or measure all of that as they're going through their routes every day. Okay. So recyclable processing. So they're planning to take it to their MRF over in Denver. So they would bring all the recycling materials there. I guess, so then, let's see, where is it? So one of the aspects that they talk about here, so again, it's the single stream, the acceptable and non-acceptable materials. Yeah, so this was all fairly standard stuff. So here's where we get into this value share program. And I think, again, as I read through this, I think there's some more discussion that can be had, because I'd like to understand a little bit more about, basically, I think what it's doing is it's a sharing of the risk between the city and the company. So instead of, basically taking everything and to your point, Member Brinker, about the changing environment for recycling and just whether these materials have any value or not, is that they're kind of hedging their bets and saying, if it continues to either go up or go down, that somehow we're going to share in that risk with them in the price. So did anybody read that differently, or do you understand that in a different way?
It just seemed ambiguous to me. I didn't really understand how that would affect price.
Mhm.
That was
Well,
my
I think,
question too.
okay, yeah, and I guess I just assumed that if, let's say, the value of plastic goes down, that somehow we'd be paying more than for that. That was my assumption, but maybe not. And I couldn't really follow this table. I know they included this example here, but I really couldn't quite follow that. So I think having
Totally.
them walk me through this maybe and getting some of those answers would help. Sorry, Member Brown, or Member Hupkey, I saw you raise your hand.
Well, I was just gonna say, I was wondering if they were trying to incentivize the city to educate the citizens about sorting, because that does seem to be where they're taking some of their hits on the price, because people don't know how to sort. Yeah, and the price of recyclables, this is a tough one. I would just ask for the clarification, but yeah, I don't like that cost is being passed on to us when, I don't know, I would think that I would need to know, more specifics if it was vague. Do they mean, is it the cost of recyclables, or is it the fact that people don't sort? But yeah, so that was my only comment. And I do hope that City Council, as part of this program, does find a way to educate citizens about what goes in the recycle bin, so that we don't incur that cost.
And they do have a whole separate section later on about the sorting. I didn't take this to be related to sorting. I took this to be related to what, assuming that it's already sorted, whatever the materials they end up with, if it costs them more to recycle them, that they're trying to pass that difference, or I guess share that difference with the city, which could affect the citizen cost as well. At least that was my interpretation.
No,
But
that's
then what I didn't
cool.
understand was that does our cost go up and down depending
Right.
on the value of the recycling? So how does that help to for us to maintain, a consistent cost?
Right. Yeah, it seemed pretty questionable.
Mhm.
I agree with you that you need to get them to walk you through it to explain it.
The effect on each resident's monthly bill, yeah, would be the biggest question I would have. It's nice to kind of have a sense of what your bill is going to be,
Mhm.
at least for the whole year, and how much could this affect individual bills to go up or down.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then we move into this section about the vehicles. So they're using the smart truck technology, which was interesting, and basically using a camera to collect data and kind of videotaping what's happening as they collect the materials, so they can look for contamination, that sort of thing.
I thought it was interesting. I don't remember which proposal it was, but one of them talked about like the lid being more than 10 inches up from the surface of the can multiple times. That would ding somebody. And then after two notifications, then they'd be fined. I mean, I think that all seemed reasonable. It's interesting that they have it automated.
I had noted that, and that was waste management.
Okay, thanks.
Because it was one of my things too. I was like, was the overage fee going to be charged directly to the resident, or is it going to be charged to the city and our whole thing goes up? I assume it goes to the resident, correct?
That's what I don't understand. So, I think part of this was having consistency in your bill every month so that we wouldn't have this kind of fluctuating rate. And of course, the intent for the city was that we operate this with no profit. So, or do we have to build up like a reserve so that if we're in a month where we pay more for recycling, that we can take from that balance?
Oh, interesting.
Rather than passing that on to the homeowners, and having the bill change. I think that's maybe what we got to work through.
How I read it is that it would go to each resident as essentially a penalty for having too much in there so that their automated trucks wouldn't work as well.
That's how I read it too.
Or an incentive to not do that. So first a couple slaps on the wrist, and after that, like, no, really, we mean it. So in that sense, it wouldn't make sense to have the whole city cover that.
Yeah, if they can track it per resident, it makes sense that would be per. Plus, we know that there's per resident capability for the bulk pickup and overages and like special. So we know that there is going to be a pass through to individual citizens, that capability will be there. So that's why I assumed it was a direct to the citizen penalty if you got flagged 3 times.
That's what I thought I heard too, but it was hard to tell. So
yeah, so it needs to be clarified.
Yeah.
All right. Didn't really see anything here about just how they're going to present or pick up the material. So they are including the 2 curbside bulk item collections annually for each residence. And so it was as we had laid out, where the resident will call. It's not going to be a date certain. It's when you want those items to be picked up. And the difference here that I wanted to note was that it's a pile. So remember how we had a lot of discussion about number of items, number of bags. So they're limiting it to a 4x4 by 16 foot area. So,
which I thought was pretty reasonable. Seems like a good solution. It's probably better than what we had proposed and more simple to manage.
So, if I didn't see anything there, so I get the only thing that kind of jumped out to me was like mattresses have to be wrapped. I don't know if
that's weird.
To do that.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. But otherwise it certainly makes it much easier, definitely, to just say, if you can rough out that space on your front of your lawn, you're good to go.
I wonder if they're doing those. I've seen some cities, I think like Westminster they're like these big bags that are like kind of that size. So maybe when you make the request, they drop one of those off for you or something like that.
Yeah, it's another trip then. That would be the only downside. I know you can buy those or somehow get those at like Home Depot, and then you pay basically to have them pick it up. But at least giving that space dimension somehow, we can make that part of our education campaign about, okay, like they say, the back of a pickup truck, if you can rough that out in your yard, and maybe we can do something around helping people, educate them on that.
The pest-free thing's weird. What are they going to do with it? Aren't they going to take it to the dump? I'm sure there's a lot of pests at the dump.
I guess it's keeping their people from getting bed bugs onto their clothing
rat
that would then
bites.
get into their employees' houses.
Rat bites. Go ahead, Member Brown.
I I just wanted to know, so what they're talking about, where you can have, because when I read this, I was confused a little bit, where they were talking about bag grass, yard clippings and leaves and so on and so forth. Are they saying you leave that on in your yard for them to pick up, and that what we had discussed prior, that now we're not talking about only 10 bags a year? So you can put yard clippings out there whenever you want to?
No, so this would be the 2 times per year. You can call them up. It can be any day that you want, or, it's not going to be like
Oh,
June and November. It could be whenever works for you. You would call them up and they would say, oh, we can pick it up next week. And then you would be able to put out as much as you wanted within this 4 by 4 foot area, basically. So it could be all yard clippings. It could be furniture plus yard clippings. They would just have to be bagged. And then bundles of tree branches, it looks like, that are cut, bundled, and tied in 4 foot or less in length.
okay. So we're still going with the 10 bags only?
Nope. So the way I read this is that whole 4 by 4 foot area could be bagged leaves.
Okay, but
big-
I'm just asking, like, if you have bagged grass, or I have a huge tree in my yard, which is always dropping, some branches, even though I get it clipped every 2 years.
So that my understanding of, so we have an RFP, so we defined all of our things. We went through our year and a half of discussing all the points, and we made
Right.
all our votes, and we requested the bulk thing, and the 10 bags a year was kind of a separate thing in our RFP. My impression of what Waste Management responded with is they basically ignored the 10 bag thing per year that you could pass around and share with your neighbors. But they did respond to the bulk on request twice a year with larger amount that they'll take than what we even asked for. And then they did include the optional yard waste, like nice, environmentally friendly way of dealing with yard waste if at least 500 citizens participate in it. But I didn't see cost for that. Was that included, Director DeAndrea?
I did not see the cost for that included either.
Yeah, so we don't know what that subscription would be, but that would be an add-on for regular access to do yard waste that gets, and it doesn't go to the landfill. It gets, I guess, composted, but so they've left out the 10 bag thing. At least that was my impression of Waste Management.
Well, then what, can I just ask, what would you do with like leaves or grass that you mow? What are you you can't throw that out?
This proposal would be you put it in your trash can,
Okay.
or you do it in your 2 time a year bulk pickup.
Okay.
Yeah, you could still throw it in your trash each week, Member Brown.
Okay.
Mhm.
And it
One
would
thing
go
I
into the
noticed-
regular trash, is that correct?
Right,
Like your regular trash can, it wouldn't go
Yeah.
into the recyclable, correct?
right.
Right.
Okay.
And then there's an optional thing that you'd pay extra for if enough people did it, and we don't even know what it would cost for
Right.
yard waste to be picked up and handled more environmentally friendly.
Okay. Thank you.
So I could see one of our survey questions being, would you participate for basically a green waste collection at your home for an additional cost?
Mhm.
That would be a very specific question within, same for.
And we'd
composting.
want, if we ask that question, we need to know the cost too.
I know, yeah. Because that's what it would probably be like, your answer would be, sure, but what's the cost? Or maybe if I know what the cost is, if the cost is low enough, yeah.
One thing I did notice that I had written down is that they were at least willing to work on whether more of those vouchers were transferable for the bulk stuff too. So say like your neighbor never has anything and you have a bunch,
Right.
essentially they can transfer it to you. So in-
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that too. That seemed pretty reasonable. Plus, I mean, even without that, they're saying $40 if you have to do an extra one, which, I mean, that's pretty reasonable too.
Right.
Well, that was per service item.
Oh, not per 4x4x16.
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so let's say you had a mattress outside, and they were very specific because one of the elements of the proposal, we listed out each of those items. And the only thing that wasn't 40 was carpet was higher, and construction debris, I believe, was higher too.
So the transferability is very valuable,
Mhm.
like Member
Mhm.
Borman or Vice Chair Borman just said,
It's been a while since we've done this.
right?
All right. I'll keep going. Member Brown, did that answer your question?
Sorry, I put myself back on mute, but yes, thank you.
So this was we wanted a pickup of our waste and recycling services at city facilities. So we did get pricing for all of that detailed by facility.
So we don't see that yet, right? That's part of what you were.
No, I didn't provide that to you guys in the summary. I was just keeping it very high level at this point.
Was it competitive with what the city's currently paying? Do you know that?
I have not compared it yet. No.
Okay.
But I will do that. Here's where they talk about the subscription yard waste collection. So again, yeah, they show a minimum of 500 residents. So we figured we had about 9,600 accounts. So what would that be? Roughly about what, 5%?
And that's totally going to depend on what it costs, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How many people would do it?
And then as another option, we did include too, and they gave us pricing for doing these yard waste events. So, and I think given the price, so it was basically, I think it was $350 to have for each dumpster. So if let's say we city staff had this at a park and people could drive through and dump their yard waste in it. That's what we did at Commerce City. It was very, very successful. We did it in the spring and again in the fall. And so really we're just paying Waste Management to pick those dumpsters up at the end of the event. It's really a positive thing. I don't know if any of you guys heard about we do those leaf pickups with the city of Littleton. And we had 400 and some cars at the second one, I guess, this year. So a lot of people were looking to get rid of their leaves, and it was just a really very popular event. So this would be doing something on probably even a larger scale than that. Member Brinker?
That's what my question was about. If we're already doing a couple of those yard waste events or leaf pickup events, I think through the former Keeping Good Beautiful, right? Who's who? That's not in our monthly bills. I guess it's in our general tax dollars. And so this would be on top of those couple of events per year. Like if we wanted to offer more than those, or would you assume those would go away? I don't get the interaction between those.
Yeah, I don't know if we've decided that yet. I think this is the first year that it's just been so successful.
Okay.
That really, even regardless of these, because I don't think we had gotten the proposals yet. We were already talking about expanding it for next year, the leaf collection, just because so many people participated. So one way or the other, I think we would look to be expanding on what we're already providing. Okay. This talks about just their reporting process, which I think was fairly robust, how they manage their customer database and communication processes. excuse me. I did notice in here that they have a mobile app, a live chat feature at their or wm.com, and they will also take phone calls. So,
I mean, related to the customer service thing, neither of the proposals specifically address the one thing that the RFP stated about citizens being able to make any other requests without having to wait. Neither of them state that unambiguously. And I think that that would need to be addressed.
okay.
Yeah, and we don't know if that's already on a service on their website.
It probably isn't, based on all the complaints I've heard about communicating with Waste Management, including our former member Fraser's wife.
Mhm. Okay, I'll
A
certainly
quick-
ask about that.
Questions I had on this for their live chat, is that only during certain hours?
Hmm.
And then they mentioned their call center in Phoenix with certain hours, like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. But slightly further down, it said someone's available to answer your call every day. I didn't get kind of the difference between those two. Oh, yeah, essentially, what do you do if it's a weekend,
Mhm.
or if you're working till 5 p.m. and, or 8 p.m. is the only time you have? Can you still reach someone on the phone, or are you then limited to the app or something? What do you do on the off hours? That's my question.
Okay.
Yeah, because we specified that, I mean, neither of them accepted, like the RFP said email. I think it was kind of overly specific on that. But it's really more about that citizens at any point without a timeline are able to submit a request, and it becomes the responsibility of the hauler to get back to the citizen within a day without them waiting. I mean, we put effort into defining that in the RFP, and neither of the proposals specifically say they'll do that.
Mhm.
Member Hubka.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm not trying to defend trash companies or anything, but I'm just gonna state that, of course, we want impeccable customer service, but I don't think we need to require that they staff it 24/7 or on weekends, because this isn't like a cell phone service. We don't have trash emergencies, do we? I mean, it is something that can wait till Monday, and maybe you could call before you go to work or after work. We want that kind of service from our utilities, but this is trash. So I'm just gonna say that out loud, that I don't think we need to be reasonable. That's all.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. As far as like the responding within a day, I mean, I guess a business day is perfectly reasonable for that. But the point is that you don't have to wait on a live chat or a phone call for someone to connect to you to get your request out, that you can submit your request and you, without waiting for anything, submit it, and then it's on them to get back to you. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
one business day seems reasonable.
Okay. Then they talk about how they would help us with the transition plan, which I think it will certainly be a challenge, knowing that everybody has different companies currently, just that communication process. So I thought they did a nice job of laying this out. Obviously, they've probably been through it before in multiple locations and have good experience in how to do this.
Member Hubka, did you have something else, or is your hand still up? Oh, okay.
So yeah, it just lays out kind of a timeline here for how they would go through this. A lot of activity occurring in the spring, and then again in the fall. We were again anticipating probably about an October start timeframe. So a lot of outreach, and again, I think that's the good part, is that we've given ourselves enough time to really roll this out and have a robust education and communication plan to the public if we do move forward. Any thoughts or ideas or questions on this part?
No, the only thing I thought is just, I don't think either of them brought it up, but just the supply chain issues. Like, I wonder if one of them got the contract, if there might be issues getting trucks in time, stuff like that.
Staffing issues. I think the labor shortage is going to hit them.
Makes sense.
The nice thing about waste management though, is I think they do quite a bit in Inglewood. You know, it might just be my neighborhood, but it seems like there's a lot of waste management people on my couple of blocks.
Well, especially since waste services is the cheapest and waste management is the fulfiller for that too. A lot of people switch to that deal.
Okay. So they would create a number of items, including a welcome packet, dedicated web page, welcome postcard, and various how they would outreach to customers. Okay, and then they're talking about the service vehicles. So again, we've got a rear end load truck for the alleys. Using what they're calling onboard tippers. And then those are the Corrado can automated system. We talked about that. So where they actually load from the front and then dump into the back container.
Those ones were limited to curb, right?
I don't know. I think so, though.
I think so. I think
I think so.
both said that they have to use the rear load for alleys.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious if the other one talked about using the same trucks for trash and recycling. I didn't really see that specifically said in the waste management one. I don't know if that's.
Okay. You mean like the rear end load truck for both? They wouldn't put the materials in the same truck though, right?
No, definitely
Yeah.
not. I just mean whether it's the same type of truck for recycling and waste. The Republic one addressed that and basically said it would be the same trucks. Waste management just didn't specifically say that as far as I noticed, but.
Okay.
I noticed that they mentioned that they're essentially exchanging out their diesel powered trucks for the natural gas ones. So maybe a more aesthetically pleasing, sounds like they're replacing that part of their fleet. And they also mentioned later on that they're at least looking at electrified vehicles. At least they addressed that, which was nice.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll get to it, but that letter that member Brinker sent, interesting, the whole incentive program for that too.
Yeah, I was impressed that they heard that this is something that we were concerned about, or it's kind of a priority, and took time to address it. And I could tell that they are on the ball with keeping track of how electric trucks are coming along and are interested in pilot programs and incentives and taking kind of a measured approach to move in that direction. And I also like that, well, CNG is better than diesel. So it seemed like moving in the right direction. I noticed in the other one, they said they would buy new diesel trucks, which yes, they're cleaner than older diesel trucks, but still here seemed like a slightly cleaner option.
I think we might have mentioned it at some point in all of our discussions, but we do generate that gas at the Inglewood Waste facility. I wonder, I think from what I understand, we're selling that on the market, but I wonder if that could be incorporated in a deal with a provider, if they could use that with the trucks.
Yeah, I don't know if it goes through like a cleaning process or what happens at the wastewater treatment plant before it gets fed back into, I believe it's Excel who takes that. Does that happen? Okay.
My friend works there and she said it's all running and they're selling it. So
cool.
Oh,
We're making a ton of money right now too.
yeah, we're making, I think we made 1.3 million off of it this past year.
That's cool.
Great.
I'll verify that dollar amount, but it's, yeah, pretty significant.
Cool.
There was an investment, to build the infrastructure to make that happen, but the anticipated basically payoff period is less than 4 years. So,
Great.
yeah, it was very much a success story to use that or to do that. Yeah, here's some pictures of the different vehicles. Okay. Yep, and so I think everything here again, so compliance with performance work statements. I think the thing that stood out to me here, they're really looking, even in this difficult time where it's hard to attract and find employees, they're still really working on how do they go about that process for finding people, making sure that they're providing a living wage, and really going through the tailgate and the safety processes to keep their drivers safe and really all their staff. Yep, so retaining staff, bonuses. These drivers, I believe, do require a CDL, a commercial driver's license. So if you've watched the news at all, it is hard to attract those and keep those employees just because it is so difficult right now and they can really go everywhere and get other jobs. Okay, and then we get into costs. So we'll stop it there. Any further thoughts or ideas on Waste Management's proposal? Okay, I'll stop sharing, and then if you're ready to move on to, I'll pull up Republic's.
Makes sense.
All right.
So when just a question about the other haulers. I mean, when we met with Waste Connections, they said the reason they didn't respond to the original RFP was specifically about the requirement that it went through the Inglewood Clearing Center or whatever it's called. And that went away in this RFP, right? But they
Correct.
still didn't respond, and we really don't know why.
No.
Okay. Because in our meeting with them, they seemed very receptive to the alley curb thing and the weight, the yard waste thing. They seemed like they were potentially going to be a great response. I'm curious why they didn't respond.
Yeah, and
Well,
I
it
can
might be
certainly
because well, I was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
it could be any
Okay.
reason. They could sell the company. They could be selling the company to Waste Management right now. I mean, there's a million things outside of our proposal why they could be, not responding. I was disappointed too that we had so few responses, but we opened it as best we could, I think.
Yeah. Well, we addressed what they said was the reason they didn't respond the first time.
Be good feedback to hear why they didn't, even though knowing that wouldn't affect us moving forward here.
Yeah, I can certainly reach out to them and just pose the question. Okay. All right.
I had one point on the Republic cover letter.
Okay.
I don't think it was intentional, but they specifically said curbside. But the rest of their proposal seems to be amicable to Ally. So I think it was just maybe their habit of addressing it that way.
Hmm. Where do you see that?
It's in my notes, but now I don't
Okay.
see it either.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, I got the sense that all of their,
Oh, the first sentence, Inglewood for curbside waste recycle and optional
oh,
composting.
okay. I didn't pick up on that. Good one. Yeah, I guess I got the sense that all of their proposals were for both curbside and alley, the way that we had.
The rest
proposed
of it seemed to totally
Yeah.
be accommodating the alley thing. That was the
Mhm.
only place I noticed that was specifically curb.
Yep. Okay. So I think this is just some background information on the company. Talking about their environmental responsibility. And then getting into their team here in Colorado and their structure. And so they would take, as it shows here, I thought the map showed that, but it's just more about, that's the map of Englewood. So they will be taking their materials to, here it is, yep. So they're located in Commerce City, and they would take the materials to their Tower landfill site out in Commerce City. And recycling would then go to their altogether recycling in Denver. And
is that the GFL that was the other potential provider?
I'd have to ask that, but I'm assuming that, yeah, that GFL owns that facility for recycling. If it's labeled that way. So I don't know that they have a separate recycling facility on their own, but I thought they did. So I thought they had told us that when we did the interviews with them. So I'll clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, so just talking a little bit about their fleet. So I did not see that they're going to be using CNG. It's still that they would use diesel vehicles.
Yeah, somewhere it said they have 65% of their trucks are CNG, but it said for this one, we're gonna buy new diesel.
Yeah, okay, you did see that. That's what I thought too.
It was some type of diesel, right? Like some cleaner kind of diesel,
Yeah.
or is it?
Clean diesel, yeah. Essentially new diesel.
Very vague, just saying it's cleaner than it used to be.
Okay, again, they're optimizing their routes, which was a request for in the RFP, how they're going to communicate with the citizens. I don't think there's really anything here that came up that kind of caught my attention until we get to the annual rate adjustment. So again, you can see here that they're recommending or requesting, they're proposing, excuse me, I'll use the right verb, that the annual rate adjustment be based on the water, sewer, trash CPI. So that's exactly what Waste Management had proposed as well. And then they're saying though that in lieu of that, a fixed rate of 3.5%, I'm assuming annually, could be an option to, if we wanted to do that instead. So our language was the lesser of 3% per year or the CPI for the Denver metro area. So this is
I thought we
change.
were like a total of 1% per year for 5 or 7 or 10 year.
So we gave them two options. So if you recall, I had sent out a subsequent conversation.
Yeah, I
after we-
saw that you
Okay.
added that other option.
Hmm.
Um,
So
and that-
neither of them even proposed on the 1% per year option. They didn't even fill out that exhibit.
For our next meeting, could you get us the comparable, like the historic, at least for some period of years, for the difference between
Sure.
the water sewer trash one and the
Okay.
Lakewood, Denver, whatever one,
Sure.
so we can see what that means? And do those ever go down?
Oh, yeah. During the recession, like in that 2008 period, they were negative.
Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
I'd be curious to see both of those going back into like 2008 then, or
Okay. Yep. All right, so that was they're proposed for the rate increase. They would not be using any subcontracting. Okay, and here they're talk about, so they would use a mix of automated side loader and rear loader trucks. Again, assuming that the rear loader is for the alleyways. Okay. They talk about recycling. Subscription compost, they did not propose on, nor did they propose the subscription yard waste for those two. So they did not provide costs for that, and not even a minimum number of people. All right,
they
so-
omitted the bulk too.
Correct. So they did provide a cost per item for that list, but the 2 vouchers per year where you could put out the 10 bags plus the 10 bundles of yard waste plus the 3 items from the list, they did not give a price for that. So when we look at the pricing, which may be at the next meeting, but their prices do not include that. So.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
Which again was a big element of why we're doing this, right? It's the aesthetics, it's giving people an option of how they're going to throw away a mattress. So yes, you can call them up and they will come out, but then it's a certain amount per item. And I think I put that at the bottom, but it was in the range of, I think, $30 to $40 per item. So you
We
do
were
not
hoping
get that 2 free thing.
We're hoping that having it included reduced dumping.
Included what?
We're hoping that by having the both included, it would reduce the dumping, illegal dumping, that you could just hold on to, you call it, you use that for your mattress rather than dump it in someone else's alley.
Right, and deal with when someone does dump in your space and you're responsible for it.
Yeah, good point.
Oh, I didn't notice. Did Waste Management address the door to curb thing?
They did. Both of them gave a price for that of $10 per month.
Oh,
Yep.
they were equivalent.
Mhm.
Okay.
But both of them, it might have been the last round of proposals, said that that fee is waived for disabled if you physically can't take it to the curb.
Okay.
And so
They both said it's waived for that?
yeah. So I don't know about this time, but I'm assuming or hoping.
I never read that.
Yeah, I
So
didn't see it,
Mhm.
but I remember what you're talking about from before.
Maybe that's a question we could ask them.
Yeah. Good point. And was it only disabled or was it also like an elderly thing?
Yeah. It was like physically unable to or have physical difficulties with something like that. So it was
Okay.
inclusive.
So they do, so in lieu of the voucher program, they're proposing that they would do the two drop-off events similar to the yard waste events, but also for large items. So again, you would have to put that in a vehicle and bring it to like a park or the service center or something to dispose of that.
Pretty much
And then-
defeats the purpose because most people aren't going to be able to transport something that
Which
fits
again,
in.
exactly, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
That was one of the benefits or why we wanted it specifically at the curb was because people have a difficulty. If you're going to get it into a truck, you might as well just take it over to the Oxford station then at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But
I
that was
found that-
kind of their answer to that.
I found the door to curb thing right there towards
Oh.
the bottom of the screen. That's the one for people that are physically unable to move their cart.
There we go. Yep.
But that's for a fee, isn't it? Or is it saying that the fee is waived? I thought that was for a fee.
I guess that's vague. I guess that how I interpreted it, which might not be true, was that that it's provided for free, so to speak.
I
If
think
you're
they had a
physically
price
unable
for it in our price doc. I think they had a price for it though.
I was
I thought I
guessing
saw-
that was
oh.
for concierge service, like if you want to pay extra for the luxury, essentially. then you
Okay,
would
so
pay
that
for
it needs to be clarified
needs to
probably.
be clarified. Yeah.
Yeah, and I should clarify that with really both of them because
Yeah.
before we would offer that up, if they do offer that for free.
One
I
of the
thought-
things I was thinking too is it might actually be ADA, the Disabilities Act, because you have to make reasonable accommodations for people
Mhm.
with disabilities, and that would apply to elderly, it would apply to people with any other physical disability. And something like picking up garbage from, next to the garage and bringing it out, that's a reasonable accommodation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that that are essentially forced on people like this. So
Right.
that would be my guess for that. But the concierge would be pay.
Remember
Well-
Brown, you had something?
Yeah, I guess I was with you, Chair Green, that I thought I saw a charge for this service. But
Right. So Director DeAndrea is going to clarify if
Okay.
that charge is waived for some classes of citizens.
Sure. And then if I could just ask a question under where it says city special events. I didn't quite understand when I read it where it says additional fees do apply. So do those fees go to, who pays those additional fees to have these special events? Is it the
So-
city or the citizens?
The way that I interpreted that, Chair or Member Brown, was
I can
that
be Chair Brown. I'm only kidding.
yeah, I'm sorry, I screw that up with everybody all the time. But I think it's where they, at the end there, where they charge, basically it's $375 for each 30-yard trash roll off. That was the way I interpreted this, is that the additional fees are
Mhm.
for then the cost for them to deliver and pick up those large containers. And similarly to what we were talking about before, that if city staff staffed it, there'd be no cost for that. But if Waste Management or Republic staffed it, then there would be some costs associated with their time as well. But I can certainly clarify that too. So you're not going to be charged a fee to drop something off at that event.
Right. I guess that's what I was wondering, what
Yeah.
were those fees? Who pays them? So
Yeah.
thank you for asking that.
Mhm. And then again, I think just a general question for Republic. So in that first paragraph there under bulky waste, so you can call to schedule, come pick up a mattress, let's say.
Mhm.
And there's the line item that they included. So if they can do that, then why wouldn't they offer the voucher program or give us a cost for that?
Good
I guess
point.
that was a question I had.
That's a
Yeah,
good question. Let's make sure we
Yeah.
get that in there.
good
Mhm,
point. Okay, thank you.
mhm. Okay. I don't think there was anything different there with anything else. Inclement weather, we talked about that in the proposal. Alley service. So yeah, here's where they talk about the mix of side load and rear load. All right, then here we go. So
Yeah, the opt out.
yep. So this paragraph right here, if you can see my hand. So what they're proposing, and this goes back to our our earlier discussion about the opt-out with waste management and what Member Brown had asked about. So the intent when we formulated the RFP as a group was that people would have to participate for the first year, and then after year one, they could opt out, but they would still pay that city administrative fee, but nothing else. Here, what they're saying is that everybody, regardless, even if they opt out, would still have to pay that minimum, amount around $21 to $23, regardless of whether they provided service or not. And I just think that's a non-starter. So,
Right.
that was certainly not our intent. I understand where they're coming from, that they're basing their prices on the economies of scale, basically, but why would we agree to that, I guess?
Right.
I mean, it's effectively no opt out because nobody's going to pay that and then not use them.
And then still pay somebody else for their garbage service.
Yeah.
Or is everybody else, paying then for that somehow? We're spreading those costs over everybody else. Yeah, so.
I mean, I get the freedom aspect of wanting to opt out, but I also, if we were to get a proposal that satisfied everything that we all wanted, the reality of opting out and having service provided by some other provider, I think, is extremely slim to be able to have something even remotely cost competitive. So to me, the opt-out isn't as big a deal if we actually got a good deal, but
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just gonna add that I'm afraid that it would just raise the ire in a public opinion survey.
I
I
agree.
think it's realistic. Yeah, they're not gonna opt out, but let's have choice. I think we're just gonna have to, and that the other proposal sounds a little more reasonable.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we know where this is headed.
All right, collection equipment. Yeah, here it says it. They will purchase new clean burning diesel vehicles. So I'll ask what clean burning diesel is.
Yeah. And why we might as well ask why, if 65% of their local fleet is CNG, are they opting to not do that? Maybe they've found that the clean or diesel is less expensive, or are there other reasons?
Yeah.
They might be trying to diversify their fleet a little bit because of higher costs of natural gas right now too.
Is there anyone you could talk to, Director DeAndrea, to find out if there's even a remote possibility of utilizing the gas that the city's generating to
Yeah,
offset?
definitely. I can talk to folks over at SPR. I don't know. Yeah, when we feed it out of the plant and it goes back into Excel's pipeline, if that's then has to be processed somehow before it can be put into a vehicle, I don't know the process, so I'll just
Oh,
have to
yeah.
ask about that.
Okay, yeah, just curious.
I don't know if it's liquefied natural gas versus like,
Mm,
you know, whatever, just compressed natural gas. And that
Yeah.
would probably be the difference, because I think the liquefied is utilized essentially as kind of like a gasoline, more like, versus gasified pressurized. I don't know what it would be called.
So it may be a whole different use that it's being sold for.
It would need to be processed probably more, is my guess.
Yeah.
But I'll certainly ask, yeah, and follow up on that. Okay. Okay. Talk about their safety program and again, how they're training their staff to be safe. That was good, having safety meetings.
They just put that competition sensitive on every page, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I didn't really see anything that stood out here. Again, just how they're driving, their customer service. Again, yeah, they talk about the various ways of reaching out or resolving issues. So call, email, mobile app, website, or even in-person requests. So
Oh yeah, they did say email, but just the same thing. I just wrote the same thing for both. Neither of them specify citizens can submit requests without waiting for a response, and that it's the hauler's responsibility to get back to citizen within 1 day is what our RFP said. But I think what member Hubka said about 1 business day is reasonable.
yeah, if I didn't put in business, that certainly was the intent. Yeah, is that it's 1 business day that you wouldn't get a response. If you put it on Friday, you're not going to get your response on Saturday. I think that's what we had talked about.
But I do think that needs to be clarified. I mean, I think
Mhm.
this one implies it more clearly than waste management, but it's still not specific.
Yeah. And I have not been on either of their apps, and I can download those to see just how easy it is to work with them or kind
Yeah,
of.
I tried to look on one of them, but I would have had to create an account and everything. So
Okay. Right, they talk a little bit about sustainability in the community. And their transition plan as well, which again, we called that out as just wanting to talk about this and how they would help us transition. I think they were a little bit less specific in their timelines. So they had text here without really, talking about specifics in terms of the timing. I guess they did put this, it was more by, I guess that is by month. Does that show like 2017? So maybe that was just like an example. Yeah, sample implementation. So it really didn't, it wasn't specific for our implementation because again, we'll probably have a good, 7 to 8 months of time frame here to implement. So I would like to get, if, we would want to be more specific about those tasks leading up to the full implementation or start of service, basically. Mm. They do offer some additional services for some of these more hard to recycle items. Their financial information, which didn't really raise my eyebrows at all.
related to recycling, but I think it's in their exceptions.
Mhm.
I And maybe this is their way of dealing with that, what Waste Management did with their whole recycling cost sharing thing. But Republic had changes in market conditions, and they mentioned recycling potentially going to landfill if certain conditions happened. I thought that was something worth bringing up. I don't know. Did you see that, member Brinker? Like, it's in their exceptions somewhere.
Hmm.
It talks about changes in market conditions. It might be a little further
Right.
down.
Right. The one that like prices would go up 8 cents a household for every increase of $5 a ton, something like that.
Yeah, but it did mention like potentially having to like stop recycling some things that weren't
Hmm.
financially, I guess, recyclable, or I don't know. Anyway, that was my last note on Republic.
Okay. So here's the exception section where we get into some more specifics. I did not really, again, I went over these just briefly with the city attorney's office and didn't really see anything here that caused a huge red flag. So again, we would have to negotiate some of the terms of the contract. They mentioned here again that this seems more geared to construction, the one that was in the RFP. So we would need to work through these different elements within the contract. This is one that I flagged in here. So B there on this page, right where my hand is. So, and I think we had talked about this, but because I think I had put it in there, maybe we took it out of the RFP, but they want to specifically specify that contractor shall acquire title to all the waste materials when they are loaded into contractor's truck. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing, a bad thing. So,
Interesting.
but yet the liability for unacceptable waste shall remain with the customer. So even though they're taking title, once they dump it into the truck, somehow that it's still on the customer for any liability.
How would they possibly track that?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I guess if someone put a bomb in their trash and then they put it in their truck, they own it, but the citizen's responsible when it blows up the truck. I don't know. I mean, that I don't know how they would track it back.
Yeah. And it does go on to say that if they find unacceptable waste, that they can refuse it, which is reasonable, that they would leave it at the curb. But I don't know how you can acquire title without then taking on the responsibility. I don't know. Maybe it's just some way to go back against if they do discover it and then know somehow who put it in there, that they can go back for damages maybe. So
And
I think that's worthy of discussion at least.
Sure. That E is what I was bringing up, changes in
Oh,
market
okay.
conditions.
Okay.
That
Yep.
contractor may at its option and upon notice redefine recyclable materials, suspend or discontinue any or all
Mhm.
services. That seems pretty extreme.
Yep.
Dispose of the waste material in a landfill and update the pricing to city accordingly. I think
Mhm.
that needs clarification.
Yep.
Good catch.
Yeah, I think that's too broad. So I think we all know that plastics is a question mark and that it may change over time. The number on the packaging, they may accept fewer of those in the future, but just to wholesale say that you're not going to, or you're going to dump everything in the landfill is a little excessive.
Yeah, or suspend or discontinue any or all services.
Yeah. So that's almost like the termination for convenience on their side.
That's what I was reading it as.
Mhm. And then I really, yeah, so G, so damage to pavement. Contractors shall not be responsible for any damage to city's pavement, curbing, or other driving surfaces resulting from contractors providing service at city locations, except to the extent caused by contractors' negligence. So again, you have to almost catch them in the act, and granted, I don't know. We've, you almost then have to, the onus, it feels like, is on us to, like, if we have somebody or a garbage truck repeatedly, let's say, backing into a city facility to pick things up, you know, there's really nothing else that's going to cause that repeated weight and damage to a driveway, let's say, or a street. And so it just seems like it puts the onus on us then to somehow prove that the damage was caused by them.
Mhm.
That's specifically for the city places, like
Yeah.
the dumpsters and stuff.
That's the way I
Okay.
read it.
Yeah.
So just at city locations, not necessarily going down a street, which I get would be harder for us to prove. You know, if it was just a regular city street, that the damage was only caused by a waste hauling truck. But again, like in the back of the rec center, we have this situation actually right now where we've got a long, narrow driveway. They back in to pick up the dumpster. And we have a catch basin back there, a stormwater catch basin, and it's just deteriorated around there from the weight of the trucks rolling over that. So now we have to replace the manhole because of that, because it's kind of broken down the pavement and the concrete around that edge. And it's like, we don't drive anything else back there that does that, that would do that level of damage.
Right.
But they're not really being negligent. They're providing the service that,
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I guess.
unless they were
Then-
like ramming into a loading dock and busting up the concrete or something.
Yeah, it's really the only way to get back there. So
Yeah.
they do take some exceptions to some of the insurance requirements. So we will have to dig into this a little bit more. So I know that I believe Waste Management checked all these boxes as not being an issue, but you can see they did not check some of the boxes here, especially for excess liability, which is probably the biggest one. So number 4 there, as well as, you know, we're probably less concerned about the technology errors and omissions, but we do have customer information. So how we keep that private and confidential, and you know, that could be a concern, as well as employee crime coverage. Again, probably a pretty low risk situation, but you can see that they're excluding that from their coverage.
I mean, my thoughts on that are if the Inglewood City Attorney is cool with it or not. That's kind of,
Yeah,
I don't think
we're
that
we're not
really
going to get into
that,
that.
yeah,
but-
that doesn't seem to be anything we need to worry about.
And I believe that's the end of it. So otherwise, again, these was the standard documents that they were required to fill out, and I didn't see anything that really caught my eye as being an issue with any of these.
I didn't either. Did anybody else see anything else in there?
Oh,
Nope.
Okay, so we're at 7:54. Maybe we should schedule our next meeting and then do the cost stuff in the next one.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
there's a few things you said you would put together for that too, that like looking at the indexes data,
Mhm.
so we can have that while we look at costs. And I know there are a couple other things that would be useful that we talked about that you said you could bring.
Yeah, so then I'll calculate like assuming a, you know, X% increase per year. So 3%, how much will that look like at the end of 7 years and then at the end of 10 years?
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. So schedule next meeting is the next thing on our agenda. Now, the timeline that you've got put together for this is that it's pretty aggressive, especially for end of year, December holiday time.
Mhm.
What are you thinking about how aggressive we need to meet to, take next steps on this?
Well, we wouldn't do anything like the survey or anything until next year. So we're not going to do any kind of public outreach until after January 1st. So I would suggest maybe we have another meeting before Christmas. And then we probably should do the scoring or the rating. And, or you can have direct staff to do that. Remember, we had the 100-point criteria. So we could fill that out based on the feedback from you, or if you guys want to do that individually, we could do that either way. And then, so if we could have one more meeting before Christmas, I think, to go through the pricing. And then I would like to have set up those conversations with the two proposers, get that feedback, and then maybe we come back after the first of the year. You can get that feedback and then set any other recommendations that you might have at that time or actions before we roll it out to the public.
How
Is
about,
next
so
week a possibility?
it's not for me. I'm going to be
Well, 2
gone
weeks.
next week. I was
Okay.
going to ask if everyone would be available, since we made it happen on a Thursday, would the 16th work for everyone or not?
I'm good.
16th?
Not the greatest for me.
Okay. Are there
Not the
other
greatest.
nights
That
of the
doesn't work for
week?
me.
Does not?
Does not. No, Thursday. I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it doesn't work for me either. Can
What
we
about
I
do
can
the
do Tuesday, the
14th?
14th.
The 14th?
Yep.
Mhm.
Can anybody do it on Wednesday, the next day?
The
The
15th? I've got the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee on the 15th.
Okay.
I can do the 14th.
I can do the 14th as well.
Is anyone not able to do the 14th?
I could probably make the second half.
How do you feel about missing the first half?
I'll just do my best. If I don't have patients scheduled, I'll just come as soon as I can. So that's fine.
What about
Okay.
What about 6:30?
Yeah, would that help?
A little?
It gets me a little bit closer. Yeah, but it's fine. Yeah,
Are-
as long as it's close. I know that this is the money part, so it's good, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm okay.
Well, does
Guys,
anyone have an
thinking.
issue with going from 6:30 to 8:30?
I'm fine.
Okay,
Okay
then
with that.
let's do the 14th, 6:30 to 8:30.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
And then I don't have anything, chairperson's choice. Does anybody else have anything? Do you want to address your email anymore, Member Brinker?
I can summarize it in case anyone hadn't read it. Excel is interested in piloting more electric heavy trucks, and they know that that includes trash trucks. So they're offering to pay a couple of trash haulers, one or more trash haulers, to essentially buy them a truck, an electric vehicle, in exchange for testing it out, getting all the data and so forth. I think cities can apply. I think private companies could apply. I haven't read it for a little while, but it sounds promising. It's promising in two ways. We could either strongly encourage the hauler that we choose, or all of Inglewood's current haulers, to go after it, or we can just feel good knowing that Excel and the companies are generally working on this.
That's amazing.
Did I didn't read that, and I didn't have time to read it in super detail. Did it talk about like are those type of trucks capable of going like a whole day on a charge, or is it only a portion of a route? Or
It didn't say, but Waste Management in their proposal, when they put on that extra couple pages, basically said that it's evolving and it's very new. And even a year or two ago, it was just totally unfeasible. But now it is feasible. I don't know if they'd have to charge midday, but they're testing it out in a few different locations. So it's something that's evolving, and since our process is so slow, maybe we'll have more information as it goes on or partway through a contract.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's pretty interesting. Does anyone else have anything? All right, then let's adjourn and we'll see each other on the 14th. Thank you very much, Director DeAndrea.
Yes.
Good
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.